everyone, I'm Jess and I'm the content manager here at Course Report. Course Report is the resource for helping people find the right coding bootcamps for them. You can use the Course Report website to research the best coding bootcamps all over the world, as well as insights on which coding languages to learn, where to apply, and how to break down all of that bootcamp jargon, and then so much more. Today, I'm speaking with a bootcamp grad from the Software Guild. So one of the trademarks of a good bootcamp program is that students usually build some kind of final project or a capstone project. So this bootcamp grad is going to walk us through what they built for their very own capstone project. But first, let me introduce them. Mark Nelson was an elementary school teacher and a choir director before reskilling with the Software Guild in 2021. Mark now works as an app developer at Interstates. So Mark, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today and show me your amazing project. Before we dive into your project, I'd love to hear a bit more about your online bootcamp experience with the Software Guild. So first, what inspired your career change from education to tech last year?
Through education, I was able to teach a few coding classes. In the fifth grade classroom, we were teaching some really basic fundamentals of like JavaScript, if-else, loops, just basic logic for coding. And that kind of got me interested initially. And then I was able to start teaching kind of an after-school video game coding program that was led by a developer here in the community. And through that, I've formed some relationships with other developers in the community here in Sioux Falls, where I'm located. And I decided that, hey, this is something I'm really interested in. Maybe this is something I could do for a living, and eventually decided to kind of make that jump, that career change.
That's so cool. And there's just so many online coding boot camps out there now. What stuck out about the Software Guild?
So I like the Software Guild because they had a presence in Minneapolis. Pre-COVID, they had an in-person boot camp in Minneapolis. So I knew they would have some relationships with companies there. I have family in Minneapolis and I'm pretty close. So I liked that it was more local than a lot of the other boot camps. And they also taught .NET C#, which is a language I was interested in, because through those conversations with other developers that I had formed these relationships with, I knew that Sioux Falls had a heavy C# developer presence. So I thought that was the most marketable skill for me in this area.
Yeah, and along those lines, like you were saying, every coding bootcamp has a different stack, a different curriculum. What else did you learn in the Software Guild curriculum?
Yeah, so full .NET C# stack. We started with kind of front-end stuff, HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Then we moved into more object-oriented coding with C#. After that, we delved into the database side, so creating the database, creating the tables, populating those tables with data, querying those databases, creating stored procedures. We moved back to the front end. We learned a little bit about jQuery and calling to a web API. We built our own API in C#. And then we kind of learned about connecting the C# web application, like ASP.NET web application, with our database to create a full stack web application. Some people say it's like drinking from a hot fire hose. I've seen that a lot. And that definitely is an appropriate metaphor.
That's amazing. And did you feel like overall this curriculum was project-based, or was it mostly like lectures that you were listening to?
So I would say it was kind of 50-50. There was a lot of reading and a lot of videos that went along with that. Many of the videos were like the founder of the Software Guild doing the coding himself or talking through these concepts. And then, after reading about a concept, watching a video about a concept, taking notes, then we usually had a project or a small code along or something to get, actually hands-on practice with the code that we were learning about.
So it sounds like you still built quite a few projects and had a real portfolio at the end.
Yeah, definitely. there's 4 badges in the Software Guild. So at the end of each of those, there was a big project that would, take a larger chunk of time. But in between that, there were smaller projects along the way, kind of leading up to that. So probably like 20 projects, 15 to
Wow.
20.
So Mark, you were working part-time while also doing this online boot camp. How did you manage to balance both of those?
So I treated the online boot camp like my other part-time jobs. I mean, at different points throughout 2021, I was working uh, 1 to 2 different part-time jobs. So I just treated the boot camp like one of those part-time jobs. I would set aside, X amount of time every afternoon to. I usually just went to a coffee shop to get my work done. I just stayed consistent with that schedule. And if I didn't get what I needed to get done during, the week, then sometimes on the weekends I would play a little catch up. But I just tried to stay consistent with my scheduling.
All right, so let's have you share your screen, Mark, so we can walk through what you built at Software Guild. All right, so Mark, this is going to be your final project walkthrough. I'd love to know first, what is the name of the project that you built at Software Guild and what kinds of problems is it solving?
So it's a car dealership web application. So it's a web application for a mock car dealership company that would allow, users to go to this website, look at cars that they might be interested in buying, browse new and used cars. It allows, users who have admin rights to go in and add new makes and models and new vehicles and update vehicles.
Mm.
And it allows salesman users to log in and complete purchases.
And how long were you given to complete this final project?
So the final badge, I believe, was 3 months, and I probably spent a month on this project in all told.
So yeah, please walk us through the features and how this app works.
I'm going to start with the database. So this is all written in T-SQL, which is Microsoft's kind of variation of SQL. This page right here creates the stored procedures. So this is the page that would call, my application would call to these stored procedures to query the database for whatever information the application needs at that time, or to update the database, any of those things. So this was in the database. This is probably where I spent the majority of my time, was making sure that these stored procedures were correct and that my queries were returning all the correct information when they were called. I started on the database end. I know developers have different, tastes, whether they want to start on the front end with like the UI or the database. I started with the database and worked toward the front. So this is where my journey started. So like this is the vehicle update procedure. It takes in all these parameters for a vehicle, updates it right here. So that's the stored procedure. Then I moved on into the C#, into this is a ASP.NET application. So I started with making models. So I made a C# object for every I guess these are database objects, right? These are objects that would be sent from the database to my application, and then they're going to be passed around from method to method within this application. So the big one is the vehicle right here. It's got all of the different properties that I wanted my vehicle to have, and that can be, passed around to the different methods there. To get this to get these models, I used ADO.NET to query the database. So this is my vehicle repository, ADO. It implements an interface, it's called, so that I can flip back and forth between using the real data from the database and using test data, which I just have locally here in this ASP.NET web application. So this code calls to the database and does all the things with the vehicle that I might need to do, whether that's searching for a vehicle, adding a new vehicle, getting a vehicle by its ID, all sorts of things here. So along with the ADO.NET database calls, I was writing unit tests to make sure that I was getting the data that I wanted to be getting with the methods that I was writing there. So through kind of thorough unit testing, once I was done with my ADO.NET, I knew that those methods worked, and I knew that I would be getting the data from a database that I wanted for my application, and I could focus on making the UI work the way I wanted it to do. And the UI works with these controllers and views here. So the admin controller, it returns views. So that's what the viewer would actually see. And then it basically walks through what are the logical processes when you need to edit a vehicle, when you need to, what else is in here? Add a vehicle, when you need to add, get users, add models. So the controllers are where I spent a lot of my time with the C#, just making sure that the logic of my application was working the way that I wanted it to work. And then the controllers would call the views, which are down here. In the views, I was using something called Razor to inject C# code into my front-end HTML code there. And then I was also using some jQuery down at the bottom and some scripts. That's kind of a high-level overview of the application, and I can show you how it runs here.
Perfect.
So I logged in as the admin, which gives us this admin drop down here. If I go to my home page, I see there's some featured vehicles on the home page here. I could search used vehicles here. Hitting search button just returns all of them. If I wanted to search, I could search here, 2015. That gets both of them, or I could search by keyword. I can adjust the price and the year there as well. Same thing for new. There's some specials with this really janky looking image here that I just pulled off the internet. It works. And then just some placeholder text here. A contact us page, when you hit submit, it submits a message to the database here. This map just links to the coffee shop where I did most of the work for this one. And then an admin, we have an add vehicle. The search function here is very similar. We can add in a vehicle. If I click save, it requires some validation. Choose from an image here, lets me do that. I can add a new make. Just go with that.
I like it.
And then we'll go model. And for mini, we'll put Cooper. Adds that in. All of that. So if I log off and then I can log back in as the sales. So now I have a sales button. So I can search, and instead of seeing the vehicle details button, we have a purchase button. It lets me go through and insert all the purchase buttons, save that, and then that purchase form will be sent to the database. And just fill this in. Cash, okay. Save. Okay, so now if I search, it doesn't show up in this. If I go home, so now it's updated to unavailable sold when I go into my vehicle details here.
Did you end up using everything that you learned at the Software Guild for this project, or did you have to learn any new things in order to build it?
I think with every new project, there's new concepts you definitely have to learn, but
Mhm.
the technologies that I used, um, the technologies I used in this project were things that were covered in the Software Guild. I had to um, find new ways to implement them.
Yeah.
Googling is half of being a developer, making sure you can find the right answer to your problem.
What do you feel like the biggest challenge was in building this project?
So we use something called ASP.NET Identity to set up the user accounts and the user roles. That uses something called Entity Framework to create the tables and seed the data into those tables on the database, which is different than how I did the rest of the database. And it also auto created a bunch of views and controllers on my application. So super helpful, but it did take a little finessing to get it working the way that I wanted it to work. And since it was touching so many of those other kind of functions and methods, I needed to get that working correctly so that I could do all the other admin stuff and sales stuff. Also, there was some weird like caching with my browser and the images that made uploading new images not work correctly. So I realized I had to just be more specific about the file path, but that took me longer than it should have to figure out.
When you were running into these kinds of issues, were you able to troubleshoot or get some support from the Software Guild folks?
Yeah, definitely. I had a mentor assigned to me, and we would meet at least 2 times for sure every badge. But I could always Slack him if I had kind of a shorter question, or arrange a one-on-one to talk through a problem if I was having a bigger issue or just wanted to talk through a concept again, or get feedback on something that I was doing. And then there was also like open office hours on Slack where I could talk to other instructors who were available to answer questions and teachers' assistants. Um, and then the Software Guild has a pretty active Slack community of just like alumni and other students that we can bounce ideas off of each other that way too.
That's cool. Once you completed this project, did you end up showcasing it or doing some kind of demo day at the Software Guild?
And I walked through it with my instructor
Hmm.
and did kind of a code review in that way.
So, Mark, after you graduated from the Software Guild, were you then able to use this capstone project as a talking point during your job interviews?
Yeah, absolutely. The potential employers, they wanted to see stuff that I'd worked on. One of my potential employers, they'd never hired anybody from a boot camp before, so they were really interested in seeing stuff that I'd worked on. So I, shared my GitHub repository with them with some of my projects that I'd worked on, and they poked through that code a little bit, and through that, I got another interview. So these projects definitely helped in the job search.
Mhm. And now you're an app developer at Interstates. What kinds of projects are you working on without giving away company secrets?
Sure. So I'm supporting like legacy applications right now that the company wrote many years ago. I'm doing a lot of T-SQL database scripts, and then kind of poking through the C# code to troubleshoot if a client finds a bug or needs a feature added.
And are you using everything that you learned from the Software Guild now on the job?
Probably not. Not all of it. The Software Guild covers a huge range, and my job is a little more focused. But I'm definitely using stuff that I learned from the Software Guild at my new job.
You had taught yourself how to code a bit before enrolling at the Software Guild. I'd love to know, in your opinion, what are the pros and cons of self-teaching versus enrolling in a coding bootcamp for anyone considering just self-teaching all the way?
For sure. I was teaching myself using freecodecamp.org, I believe, which was a really good resource to learn a lot of front end stuff when I was doing it. I'm sure they've added more courses now. And that was really good for me, just kind of starting out and seeing like, hey, am I really interested in this? Can I be consistent? Does it hold my interest enough where I'm going to keep coming back to it and keep learning about it? But I found for me, I needed more of a structured approach, and I also wanted to learn things that would be applicable like in the market in Sioux Falls. So I decided to go, toward the full boot camp route there. But it's a big financial decision, so weigh the pros and cons. If you can learn on your own and you can stay consistent and you can find good resources to learn on your own, maybe that's the route for you. But I found the connections that I made and being able to bounce ideas off my mentor to be very helpful.
Hmm. For any new Guildies coming in the next cohort, do you have any advice for them? Anything you wish you had known before the first day of the boot camp?
Hmm. I guess just try to stay consistent in like when is your work time? Set aside time to get the work done. You're going to run into problems where like I think I can knock this out in 20 minutes and it takes you 2 hours. Don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help. And Stack Overflow and other forums are going to be your best friend for finding answers to those really niche questions that you just can't figure out.
And my last question for you is, so far in your tech career, was the Software Guild worth it for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. I wouldn't be where I am today without it. So for sure.
And I'd say that's an excellent place to wrap up this capstone project spotlight. It was so cool to see what you were able to build in just a few weeks at the Software Guild, Mark. And thank you so much for talking with me today, and best of luck in your brand new career. So we will be posting a recording and a transcript of this video interview on the Course Report blog with contact information for the Software Guild, just in case you're interested in applying for one of their upcoming cohorts. And thanks so much to all of you for watching. Tweet at us, email us, and let us know which topic you'd like us to cover next on the Course Report blog. And in the meantime, you can follow Course Report on Facebook and Twitter. And if you're a bootcamp alumni, don't forget to post a review of your own bootcamp experience on Course Report. Your review is a huge help to anyone thinking of getting into tech today.